Vaccinations look like offense to me. That doesn't look like defense. My town just went on offense. I'm very, very happy about that. It happened about the same time that my country put a helicopter on Mars. Who put the helicopter on Mars? Was it the politicians? Well, they helped. But it was the engineers. We're watching our best scientists and our best engineers re-engineer our whole frickin' civilization right in front of you. We're working on nuclear fusion, space exploration, vaccines like we've never seen. Is that a big deal? Yeah, that's really big. I guess Johnson & Johnson announced that they filed with the World Health Organization for emergency use of its single-dose COVID vaccination. So now there will be a one-dose vaccination. I'm guessing that it will not be as effective, but it could be. I think it's both in the 90% range. Like one's in the low 90%, one's in the mid 90%, something like that, right? So it might be a little less effective, but not so much less that it would matter that much, right? So I told you that everybody asked me, are you going to get the vaccination when it's available to you? And I always said, I'm going to wait till the last possible moment when I have the most possible information. Because we might find out that one of the vaccinations is better than the other, right? I mean, that seemed obvious that we would at least hear a story about that, even if it's not true. We might find out that one has some side effects that we didn't know about. So I'm waiting until the last minute to make my decision. I'm leaning toward getting it. So I'd be really surprised if I don't get the vaccination. But this is the kind of thing I'm waiting for, right? Now, did you know that within the time that we're waiting for the vaccination, we might get approval for a single vaccination? That was worth waiting for, right? So I didn't have an option of getting it, but that's why I wait on the decision. All right, so I would be far more likely to favor the single shot than the double shot. Here's the good news. NASA just put a helicopter on Mars. You know, I tweeted and live streamed on this, but I just can't stop being happy about this. NASA put a helicopter on Mars. And I guess it's a little helicopter that's built for their atmosphere. How do you build a flying device for another world? I mean, how incredibly awesome is this? And if you understand the number of technical challenges that all had to be solved just right and nothing could go wrong, I mean, everything had to work just right to get this thing to land safely in one of the most hardest places to land. This is a big deal. And I've said this before, but I can't say this enough. Whoever controls space will control everything. Because if you control space, you've got a good chance of controlling the planet, because whoever has the high ground controls the planet. There's probably more wealth ultimately in space. Ultimately, not right away. Whoever gets up there is going to own the United States. Now, how big is it that I think we're the first, the United States, to put a flying object on Mars? Because you don't control Mars unless you control the sky on Mars. And we put the first flying device on Mars. We are the closest, so far, to controlling the sky militarily on Mars. You don't think that matters, do you? It's going to matter a lot. Now, it might not matter to you, but it's going to matter to your grandkids, because whoever controls the sky and the air in Mars controls Mars. And whoever controls Mars has a base in space that would be unparalleled. the moon might even be better, but Mars is pretty important for controlling space, right? So militarily, it's gigantic. How it makes us feel as a country is gigantic. Is this a Trump accomplishment or a Biden accomplishment? Well, I think it probably has been started even before Trump, I would imagine. So I'm not sure you can give people credit, but at least Trump must have funded it. At the very least, he funded it, right? So this is the sort of thing that I think Trump has the smart strategic advantage. If Biden is not working on nuclear power really hard and working on conquering space really hard and making sure that we have flying technology in space, flying technology, both for the outer space part but also on planet, if those aren't highest priorities for the future, Biden isn't getting it right. I think Trump understood that. Don't you? Yeah, and I think Elon Musk, of course, understands it. So, yeah, and Trump did Space Force, right. Space Force was not just because it's going to look good on his resume. Space Force is because he understood power. If there's one thing that Trump understands that nobody should be arguing about, he gets power, right? He knows how power works, all of the ins and outs of power. And he looked at space and said, uh-oh, if somebody else has that power someday, space, we're doomed. We have to have that power. And so he went out and created the seeds, and we're seeing it start to come to fruition, of that power. I think Trump is beyond smart president. He's visionary, if you look at Space Force as an example. So I don't know if he'll ever get enough credit for that, but he should. And the other good thing I was saying on a live stream yesterday, I did a little impromptu walk in my neighborhood, if you saw that. And I noticed yesterday for the first time that one of the facilities near me, there's a big fairgrounds facility not too far, and they put up giant tents and they built a vaccination center. Now, of course, there have been vaccination centers for some time in other places. And we know that the vaccinations have been rolling out, of course. But I have to tell you that when you see a giant human-made vaccination center pop up in your town, it'll change you. It doesn't feel the same as just knowing it's happening. I actually cried when I saw it. Because this was the point where the humans go on offense, right? Defense is putting on your mask and socially distancing and closing your schools. That's just defense. I don't really want to be in the military that only plays defense. I want to fucking win. And winning requires offense. Now, of course, I'm speaking just figuratively, but vaccinations look like offense to me. That doesn't look like defense. And the psychological morale thing that did to me, watching my town go on offense for the first time. So maybe your towns have been on offense for a while, if you got it first, but my town just went on offense. I'm very, very happy about that. It happened about the same time that my country put a helicopter on Mars. Who put the helicopter on Mars? Was it the politicians? Well, they helped. But it was the engineers. American engineers, and they did work with people born in other countries, etc. So, different national origins were involved in the landing. But let's say mostly American engineers just saved our bacon in the future. Or they're on a path to doing it, meaning giving us some military assets in space. At the same time, our scientists built these vaccinations in record time. Politicians helped, right? The politicians did their job on both cases. But we're watching our best scientists and our best engineers re-engineer our whole frickin' civilization right in front of you. We watched our engineers say, wait a minute, you can't commute? Well, we got this other technology. Now, a lot of those engineers were in China, I suppose, the Zoom people. But the point is that engineers and scientists are really pretty big heroes. I mean, not to take away from the frontline responders who are in a category of their own, hero-wise. But I don't think we give enough credit to the engineers and the scientists. You know, we complain about the science all day long, but usually we're complaining about what journalists told us about science or what politicians told us about science. We're not really complaining about science because we don't have access to it directly, but they're doing some stuff. I'll tell you, that stuff we can't see directly. The science, they're doing some stuff. Just put a helicopter on Mars, if I haven't mentioned that before. So, is the golden age here? Might be. What do we have in front of us? Probably peace in the Middle East. There might be a war with Iran before we get there, but it will be short if it happens. Probably space colonization is entering its golden age. Probably the way we manage future pandemics is forever changed, taking that risk, which was a gigantic risk, and probably figuring out how to put that back into a smaller box. So it's easy to get caught up on, who got canceled and what's in the headlines and who's arguing with who and our country is divided and stuff. But we're working on nuclear fusion, space exploration, the vaccines like we've never seen. I think education will be, I think there are now, Corey DeAngelis does the best reporting on this about school choice. And I think there are 23, if I have it right, 23 state legislatures who have put forth legislation for funding to follow the child instead of the school. The effect of that is if your child decides to go to a non-public school, that the funding would follow the child and help fund the other entity. So almost half of the country. Now, is that a big deal? Yeah, that's really big. Because the teachers' unions are the primary source of systemic racism. And systemic racism is probably the biggest problem in the country, at least domestically, right? And we have, it looks like, we're marching pretty quickly towards solving it by taking money away from their control and allowing the student to go where they want with the parents, of course, and take the money with them. This is so big. It's almost incalculably, is that a word? Incalculably large. If it keeps going the way it's going. So you still need to get there, but it's going the right way. Right? So, who promoted that? Yes, I think Trump was one of the louder voices, and the Republicans in general were the louder voices on that topic. Somebody says, no, systemic racism is not the biggest problem. It's the biggest problem in terms of disunity in the country. Now, if you're saying that it's not real, here's my definition of systemic racism, which is that if you can't get a good education, because you're, let's say, in a depressed part of the country, if you can't get a good education and you don't have a choice, that does suggest that there's a ripple effect all the way from slavery to the current world. And even though it's true that black people can succeed, of course, there is an average difference. That's real. There's an average difference, and of course there's a ripple effect from slavery. How could there not be? So that doesn't mean it's your fault, and it doesn't mean you have to lose your job to fix it. That's a whole different conversation. I'm saying that if you could fix the schools, you would eventually, and it wouldn't take that long, maybe one generation, probably stop talking about systemic racism. because everybody would have an education that wanted one, and the economic disparity would close on its own, etc. So it's a big deal.